Hello everyone. You go for a medical checkup or donate blood, doctors often perform a very basic procedure, which is measuring our blood pressure. So what is blood pressure and why is it necessary? How do we determine if blood pressure is normal, high, or dangerous? Let's explore these questions in the video. Firstly, what is blood pressure? It's simple to understand. Blood is the fluid in your body and pressure is the force exerted by one object on another. Specifically here, the pressure of blood on the walls of your blood vessels, like the pressure of water in a water bottle or air in a tire. Blood pressure is the tension in the blood vessels. With blood pressure measurements, we can assure whether the blood vessels are too stretched or there is a risk of them bursting. So how do we measure blood pressure? There are typically two types of blood pressure measuring devices: electronic and manual or mechanical. Electronic ones are easy to use. You just attach them to your arm and they give you the result. Manual devices are a bit more complex. Let me explain how doctors usually measure blood pressure. First, they wrap a cuff around your arm. Then, they use a stethoscope to listen to your heartbeats. To start, doctors inflate the cuff by pumping air into it. As they do this, they listen for the first time they hear your heart again, which represents the minimum pressure. Why do we have maximum and minimum blood pressure? Well, as you might know, the heart pumps blood in a rhythmic cycle, creating varying pressures. When the heart pumps, it generates high pressure called systolic pressure, and when it relaxes, it's low pressure, known as diastolic pressure. Therefore, the maximum pressure occurs when the heart pumps, or systolic, and the minimum is when it relaxes, diastolic. So what's considered normal blood pressure? First, we need to know the measurements that doctors often record. For example, 120 by 80 mmHg means the maximum pressure is 120 mmHg, and the minimum pressure is 80 mmHg. People often say that 120 by 80 mmHg is normal blood pressure. However, the truth is that whether blood pressure is high or low depends on your age. As you get older, the standard blood pressure tends to increase. Additionally, women tend to have lower blood pressure than men. Blood pressure also tends to be higher at night, especially during sleep. So depending on who you are and when you measure it, there will be an optimal blood pressure reading. If you measure it while you're lying face down and find it slightly high, it might actually be very high and dangerous. Furthermore, at different stages, the World Health Organization sets different standards. Sometimes different medical organizations have varying criteria. This is because at the end of the day, it's based on human research, and different studies on different groups may yield slightly different results. If you don't believe it, you can search online. Every standard is accompanied by a source, usually from a reputable medical organization. However, currently, the optimal blood pressure for adults is generally considered to have a systolic pressure lower than 120 mmHg and a diastolic pressure lower than 80 mmHg. In other words, a blood pressure reading below 120 by 80 mmHg is considered optimal. According to the World Health Organization, the best condition for heart health is a systolic pressure less than 105 mmHg and a diastolic pressure less than 60 mmHg. Blood pressure is considered high when it has a systolic reading of 140 or higher, a diastolic reading of 190 or higher, or both. So is high blood pressure dangerous? Let's find out. High blood pressure is indeed very dangerous and is often referred to as the silent killer. High blood pressure doesn't always show clear symptoms, but it can lead to damage in your arteries and veins, reducing blood flow throughout your body. It can result in strokes, heart attack, and heart failure. Low blood pressure is also dangerous. It can cause dizziness and fainting when the brain doesn't receive enough blood supply. Severe conditions with rapid and significant fluid loss, like diarrhea, vomiting, severe infections, or severe allergic reactions, can threaten life. In conclusion, through this video, you've learned what blood pressure is, how it's measured, and how a blood pressure reading is composed. Always keep track of your blood pressure to address it promptly. If it becomes too high or too low, stay healthy and don't forget to follow me for more valuable information.